Well, first of all, Roger, I would say that from a provincial context, I've had the opportunity, along with other Alberta higher education leaders, to be part of the formation of an organization called eCampus Alberta. It's now a decade old, but when you look back on that 10 years and you look on the growth of eCampus Alberta, charged with the responsibility of increasing, enhancing learner opportunities through online delivery, you come from no registrations 10 years ago to this year just passing 20,000. I don't think that you'd be able to find another example of that, not only in Canada, but one could argue even North America, in terms of that volume in such a short period of time. So what it really speaks to, from a business standpoint, if we could take that perspective, is it speaks to a pent-up demand. It speaks to a demand primarily of people who don't have the opportunity to have what we call face-to-face delivery. Now, some would argue that that is a product unto a rural environment or a non-metropolitan environment, but the facts speak for themselves when you take a look at the past 10 years and you take a look at where did those 20,000 registrations come from. And you'll see the distributions are relatively equal between urban users and rural users. And so it's been quite a success story, but what it really speaks to is the answer to your question, which is this is with us. And are we at the tip of the iceberg? I'd likely suggest that we are at this stage, and that the next 10 years will be perhaps another level of online education that we have not even begun to envision. Because, of course, like any other type of change, you're going to have those that are what are called early adopters, and you're going to have those that are perhaps not as quick to change. And clearly, over this past decade, using that as our time context, we have seen this. But I think it would be fair to say that where we're at today, as we approach the year 2012, 2013, across our system, I think that we've well passed the should we or shouldn't we. We're now into so much of the how and what will best serve the student of tomorrow. And so I think that through professional development and through attrition, what we're seeing now all across our nation, of course, is a faculty which, of course, not only has embraced online learning and distance education, but they are now looking into the nuances and differentiations and, of course, the advancements and innovations. Well, I think clearly social media is a primary, not a secondary, not a tertiary. It's a primary form of living, working, playing, relaxing together. I think we're very acceptive of that change. I think that the other thing, using as an example that goes with that, is the gamification of curriculum. Now, we're just at the early stages of that particular phenomena. But one of the things that you're going to see as we embrace this next decade is content, which is gamified. So as a result of the students' affinity towards online and handheld devices and primary forms of playing, working, visiting together, gamification has now transcended over into the world of curriculum development. So here at our college, we're working with the private sector in a partnership. Some places even a tri-party relationship with provincial distance education entities, whereby we can then get into a vanguard position of the gamification of a curriculum, such as our now in development Canadian Institute of Rural Entrepreneurship. Because some of the earliest gamification of curriculum has come in the entrepreneurship area. If using your term, which was the sage on the stage, right? If we look at tomorrow, we're probably looking at roles that are evolving as we speak, from the sage to facilitators, to conveners, to purveyors, to innovators, to professionals that will help students become the best they're capable of becoming by virtue of using the tools and instrumentation and knowledge that is at their disposal. And I think we're seeing that all around us. And it's not just a, shall we say, a property of the freshly minted instructor of 2012, 2013. All across our system and within our college, we're seeing grand examples of the middle-aged or the later stage instructor who has embraced technologies, has embraced these new roles, and has actually brought to the stage, or to the party, as you may want to use an analogy, all of that previous sage on the stage knowledge, and is actually doing an outstanding job of enhancing learning opportunities by virtue of looking after the learning environment in a very upbeat, technologically savvy way. Let me put it this way, Roger. In a very, very short period of time, there's going to be 9 billion people on this planet, which is a significant increase from our 6 to 7 billion at the present day. As the CEO of Bear recently said at the Chamber of Commerce in the month of May, we do not have the capacity to feed a planet of 9 billion people at this point in time. Stark reality for our world, but it's not just about being able to feed them. It's about being able to sustain them. It's about being good stewards of the land, good stewards of the wind, good stewards of the water, good stewards of all that we have been given. So, who teaches all of this? Who does the work with regards to applied research? Who is a champion for ruralism in our nation? Olds College. Olds College is about agriculture, horticulture, land and environmental management. We're about rural entrepreneurship. We're about agribusiness. We're about the small to medium-sized producer, which this world will depend on more and more as each and every decade passes. We are about applied research and innovation, about the land, about the water, about everything that is going to be important to this planet. So why we say that, and why we paint that picture, is that we see the new rural as a coming together of both what we have known for decades as being urban over here and rural over here, but in a global environment, those two paradigms are coming together. And so as each year passes, you see less and less differentiation. I think so, and I know for a fact that our country, whether it be Ottawa as a nation capital or whether it is Edmonton as a provincial capital, receive numerous inquiries over the course of any given year, particularly from developing nations and economies. When those questions are asked as to where can they seek assistance, where can they seek curriculum development, where can they seek applied research and innovation, where can they seek expertise, the phone rings here, or the email is dispatched, or the text message is sent. We get a tremendous amount of that activity today. But one more thing. I think it's fairly safe to say, in a Canadian context, from a public education standpoint, is we cannot afford the system that has presently been built. And so we as a nation have got to be concerned. We as a nation have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to look towards integrated learning environments. We cannot afford silos, nor can we afford to teach the world, when asked, about siloism. We need to help them understand that you really have a wonderful opportunity, whether it's in the education of women or in the education of underserved populations, that you need to envision a future of an integrated learning environment. And by that we mean multiple partners, partners of towns, villages, hamlets, communities, working in hand with K-12 sectors who are working in hand with higher education sectors, who are working in hand, whether they be colleges, universities, or research institutions, or the private sector. But we're going to see a time where we're going to have to be highly collaborative if we're going to be able to solve some of those problems, because of a resource base that is shrinking, and a healthcare industry and its cost that is growing. I think, Roger, it starts in terms of planning. There's an old saying, measure 6 times and cut once. Well, we'll spend a lot of time in the measuring. And being an institution of our size, which is, in the larger context, small, but we think just right, we don't try to be all things to all people. So we're very selective. And so we take a look at specific areas of the world in terms of where we can put limited resources, but put them in a major way. A good example, at the present, are places such as Mexico. Now, Mexico is a country that is a comer. And of course, being a comer, they have needs. And their needs particularly are in education and training, specifically in agriculture, agri-food, rural entrepreneurship. And we're very much with them on this in terms of the growth of their capacity, but in doing so, the growth of their economy. Another example would be that we have pinpointed the Caribbean. And within the Caribbean, we have pinpointed the Dominican Republic. Now, the Dominican Republic are working in concert, and us with them, on a fairly major undertaking right now, and that is the branding of a coffee. Now, the branding of a coffee that is grown in the Dominican Republic is grown by small producers. Now, those small producers are the very same people that will be rewarded for that production as that product is moved upstream into production, retail, wholesale, retail, selling, all through the system, the channels of distribution, and they work in reverse right back to the small producers in the mountains just outside Arabicoa. It's a balance. Yeah. If you're prudent, on one hand, you would be hard-pressed not to be working with a multinational, i.e. John Deere, Case New Holland, a John Deere training center, Western Canadian, with all of your various dealers being able to rely on the John Deere Training Center, their partner, us, for the education and training and upgrading of the dealers and the various staffs. You'd be hard-pressed at the same time, in a balanced equation, not to recognize what is very clear across the world. If we're going to feed 9 billion people, you're going to have to work with the small to medium-sized producers, because we don't have the capacity presently to feed a world of 9 billion people. So we strike that balance as best we can in working with the countries such as the Mexicos, the Dominican Republic, the small to medium-sized producers, in bringing that capacity up to the point where it is entrepreneurially sound. Well, I think that there has to be a focus on it. I think that there's adequate evidence to of course build a body of knowledge, which in turn needs to be purveyed to tomorrow's student, such that they can critically think about their role and their responsibility in working either with the small to medium-sized producers themselves as an entrepreneur, or working with a multinational. I think that goes with your stewardship responsibility as an educational institution, and we try the best that we can in terms of the building of our curriculum in concert with industry. And I think that with our 24 to 30 industry advisory boards, working with our faculty is one of the greatest strengths of Olds College in staying competitive and staying in step with the needs of our society and with the needs of industry. The thing about being president of Olds College in 2012 was the same thing as it was in 2001, and that's the people. I came to the college because of its people. It was the people of Olds College that sold me on the opportunity, mostly because of their enthusiasm and their ability to make great things happen for students and not let clutter get in the way. Well, it was true then, and it's as true today. And so the best thing about being the president of Olds College is its people. Many, many people know the brand Olds College. And it's a function of 100 years. It's a function of the many, many generations of good people who did good work through all of those years and spawned their achievements and accomplishments right across the country and the globe. But I think that at the heart of it all was they stuck to their knitting, and they didn't try to be something that they weren't. And I think evidence has shown that it was a very, very good business principle. I suppose I've been involved in higher education most of my life. Outside of that time I've spent in professional sport. And I think what I see today is I see a very aware student. I see a student that is highly participatory, might be participatory in their own world, so to speak, might be participatory in their communities and with publics, but they're highly participatory. I see them with an identification with issues. I see them as a student of today that is committed, right, to a cause. And I think you've seen evidence of that across the country, particularly in the last few years. But we're seeing that right on our campus, right? I see a student today that is very diligent. I think that would be diligent towards good work, diligent towards finding a great job. And you might even argue diligent towards finding a career, right? And so I see that. And I see a student of higher character than ever before, with ingenuity at the core, and so much around them to help in that ingenuity. So I think it's a good time. It's a wonderful time to be in higher education. It's a wonderful time to be a Canadian. It's a wonderful time to be at Olds College, and we're quite blessed.
That's a good note to end on.
Yeah.